Hello there, it's Tania Gabrielle, Wealth Astro-Numerologist. Welcome to Star Codes, the podcast where we look at an upcoming event in the stars and numbers, the astrology and numerology. And in this case, we have another special episode. Last week, I looked at the geodetic maps of the Middle East conflict going on and received a lot of feedback. And so this week, we'll have another special episode where I'll be looking at an upcoming potential event in East Asia and the Pacific using geodetic astrology, not just the maps, but also the charts, including eclipse charts. And we'll peruse a prophecy regarding an underwater seismic event that will either be volcanic and or earthquake related for July. Again, in the Pacific between Japan and the Philippines. So I will be using the tools I have to look at the frequencies, the astrology, the numerology, the geodetic maps, the charts, and give you an overview of the potential dynamics in play for this event. Now, I am not an expert in geology or anything seismic event related. I am an avid follower of Earth events, always have been. I've been a long-time subscriber to the USGS email notifications for earthquakes around the world, and also worked at the USGS, United States Geological Survey, when I was a lot younger, in my late high school years and early college years in the summers. So always been fascinated by geography and geology, and it ties into astrocartography, which of course I do for my clients, where I find your most fortunate and challenging places to live. Also cyclocartography, where we look at current cycles for you personally on Earth in terms of travel and moving. And so I love the combination of using astrology and the geographic maps to begin with. Last week, we focused on geodetic astrology, and I just want to remind you that geodetic astrology, those maps are not the same as the astrocartography that we use when we look at your personal charts or even look at countries and current events. So they're specifically designed and used for many, centuries, including Ptolemy right after, first and second century, to look at countries, areas of the world, so mundane astrology in terms of geography and tracking the planets across the map to see what is being activated and where. Now, there's been a prophecy that sometime in July, and some say July 5th, there can be some heightened activity, seismic activity, volcanic or earthquake related in the Pacific between Japan and the Philippines. Now, this piqued my attention because there have been a lot of different signs pointing to this time, July in 2025, being a really active month. And in the numerology, it is a 16 universal month, and 16 is the number of sudden, unexpected shifts. So that could be, of course, Earth shifts as well. And 16 reduces to 7, which is the lightning strike of inspiration or, again, sudden changes. And we're in a 9 universal year all year in numerology, and 9 is about endings and another shift. It's the end of a 9-year cycle. So this combination with the geodetic maps and the astrology is quite potent to begin with. Now, of course, we have to pinpoint areas of the world using geodetic astrology to find locations. So that's what I did. Just to review that the 12 signs in astrology from Aries to Pisces are divided into 30-degree segments around the globe in 2 ways. So I'm not going to teach you about geodetic astrology, but I just want to let you know there are the signs from Aries to Pisces that are for the midheaven lines, which are the longitude lines. And then there are also the 12 signs for the ascendant lines, which for the most part look like more diagonally through the map. So Manila and Tokyo are part of the world where Scorpio is the ascendant. And you can see here I drew a blue arrow for the Scorpio ascendant segment. You can see it starts in South Korea. The Scorpio segment goes through China. You can't see that on the map. And then all of Japan is in the Scorpio ascendant segment. That means that Japan's astrology map geodetically will have a Scorpio ascendant. And then we also see Leo. Leo is the midheaven, and so that means that in this segment, again, from North-South Korea area downwards, even Manila, down you can see in the Philippines down below, that Manila would be in the Leo midheaven section. So both astrology maps for Japan, meaning I'm looking at Tokyo, and Manila in the Philippines, which are the two areas we'll be checking, are going to have a Scorpio ascendant and a Leo midheaven. So I just wanted to show you those two segments of the world map. And then we also want to note that Scorpio is a water sign, governs oceans, for example, and Leo is a fire sign, and fire is related to volcanic activity and earthquake activity. So let's go look at the planetary transits on July 5th, 2025, 5 a.m. Tokyo time for the area around Tokyo, Japan, Manila, Philippines on the Geodetic map. And what you can see here is that the moon, which moves super fast, the moon moves through the zodiac extremely rapidly. So it is in each sign for 2.5 days. So you can imagine how quickly it moves across the world map. So on this day, at this time, the moon is crossing a line over Japan. In this case, it's the Mercury line over Japan. And you'll notice in the Philippines that the moon line crosses over the Pluto line. You can see the moon line is this brownish gold line, and then the Pluto line is a dotted brownish gold line. They cross right over the Philippines. That is quite significant because Pluto governs very deep transformation. It governs the underworld. It is related to volcanic activity as well. And plutonium is what Pluto was named after, so it can be very explosive energy. So that is significant. And then one more area in the Pacific, since this could be underwater activity, often earthquakes are offshore, volcanic activity as well can be under the water as well. This line, this is a Mars line, and it's crossing that blue Uranus line. And again, that is definitely between Japan. This whole area is covered. It's not just that little cross area, but the whole area between Japan and the Philippines is definitely covered here by that crossing of Uranus and Mars. So those are three areas that immediately jumped out at me. So now what we're going to do is look at the geodetic chart, the astrology chart for Tokyo and Manila at this time on July 5th, local time. Of course, Tokyo, as I explained already, is in the area of the globe where the chart would have Scorpio as the rising sign, the ascendant, and Leo as the midheaven or the ruler of the 10th house. And so here we have the planets placed. And what I've done is I've highlighted in green the 4 angles, because when planets are close to those 4 angles, they make a bigger difference on the chart. Now that also is true for your birth chart. When you have planets near the 4 angles, north, south, east, west, which are the ascendant, midheaven, descendant, and momentarily, we feel those planets more because they're close to very sensitive points in the chart. So what we notice first is the moon is conjunct, merged with the ascendant. Moon is in Scorpio, the ascendant is Scorpio. This is very potent energy. And Pluto is in the third house, very close to the bottom angle here, the momentarily angle. Pluto is opposite to Mercury. Mercury is near the other angle, the midheaven angle right there. So they're really activating this chart, and they're creating a T-square in the chart, which is highly potent, highly activating. So that really jumps out. Uranus is close to the other angle. There are 4 angles, and Uranus is very unpredictable energy. Uranus is in the very final degree and minutes of Taurus. Uranus is about to leave Taurus, so it's very, very late. This is July 5th, and Uranus leaves Taurus on July 7th. It's very powerful in this position and very late Taurus, and impacts the other angle. So all 4 angles are activated. Yeah, this is a very active chart. So in Manila, we have a very similar chart, except the moon is much closer. The moon is also in Scorpio. Here you see Scorpio as the ascendant. Again, we see Leo as the midheaven, and the moon is square to Pluto. The Pluto again is opposite the midheaven. Very similar charts, except in Manila it's a lot tighter. You can see the planets are closer to these green colored angles, so there's more potent energy with this map. Also, Chiron comes very close to the 4th angle. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 angles all lit up in lights. We have the same opposition from Mars that I just spoke about. So very similar chart, just a little more potent. So now we're going to do something really interesting in terms of learning how to forecast using geodetic cycles. We're looking at the eclipse cycles that preceded the July 5th date, and that would be the eclipses in March, and then the eclipse cycle last year that was at the end of September, early October. The eclipses are highly potent astrological events. They release a lot of energy and they have a long-term impact. And so in geodetic astrology for forecasting, we look at the past 2 cycles to give us an indication of how the energy might impact that area of the world. So what we have for Manila, the eclipse on the 17th of September in 2024 was a lunar eclipse in Pisces. This chart activates 3 angles, but what I really notice about this one is that Pluto is almost exactly on this immaterially angle, the one at the very bottom, pointing to the midheaven. So look how close that is. That is incredible. Pluto is also retrograde. And then we also see Pluto is square 90 degrees to the Scorpio ascendant for Manila. Pluto rules Scorpio, and we see this Pluto angle on all of the charts. We saw it for the July 5th charts with both Tokyo and Manila, and now we see it in the eclipse charts. So Pluto plays a huge role for this part of the world because it is moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, and in both charts this is one of the main 4 angles, and especially in Manila it's very, very close to that angle. That's something to be noted. So the second chart we're going to look at is for Tokyo. We're going to look at the lunar eclipse in Pisces. This is the same eclipse we just looked at with Manila. You can see Pluto is further away from the angle but still close enough. And then Uranus, right here in the 7th house, is very close to the descendant angle. So there's an activation that is very strong. I also note that Mars and Jupiter are in the 8th house. And the 8th house is important for geodetic astrology. It can indicate a major, deep event, and that impacts a lot of lives. So when both Jupiter, the expansion planet, and Mars, the planet of fire and big explosive, aggressive events, are in the 8th house, which is the natural Scorpio house, so very important for these 2 areas, Tokyo and Manila, all of these cities and countries in their location have Scorpio rising. And so the 8th house is in particular activated. And next, we're going to look at the solar eclipse chart in Libra. This is for Manila, the Philippines. What we see here is the moon, sun, and Mercury all in the 12th house. The 12th house is the hidden house. It's the house that's naturally ruled by Pisces. And they are square to Mars. So that's very, very explosive energy. And then Pluto, as you can see, again, right on the cusp here of that angle, the Imam Chirli angle at the bottom of the chart, pointing to the midheaven and squaring again. There's a square from Pluto, 90-degree square to the Scorpio ascendant, and Pluto rules Scorpio. So this is, again, a very, very potent chart for Manila. And finally, we have the total lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 14th, 2025. This is the map for Manila. And again, you see, look at that. Pluto is right on the cusp. It's now moved into the 4th house, but it's literally on that, sitting on that angle, pointing to the midheaven. And then Mars is at 18 degrees in Cancer. It's in the 9th house, also very, very close to that Leo midheaven. So that's very notable as well for Manila. So as you can see, these charts are very potent. That Scorpio ascendant is absolutely huge because Pluto was moving from Capricorn into Aquarius last year and is now in Aquarius and literally creating that square to its own sign, Scorpio. It squares the most challenging, activating, I should say, aspect in astrology. It really breaks things open and makes you get into action. And for a mundane chart, it definitely activates energy in a big way. So this Pluto placement for all those cities and countries that are within that Scorpio sector that we looked at earlier in this podcast, they are all impacted by that. They all have Scorpio rising and Leo at the midheaven, and Pluto is pointing to the Leo midheaven directly on the cusp. So really amazing to see that. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, we did look at the July 5th maps as well and saw those crossings of those areas around that time. And finally, I just want to mention that Neptune stations retrograde on July 5th. In fact, at 5:34 a.m. Tokyo time, Neptune stations retrograde, and Neptune governs Pisces, the deepest waters of the ocean. And when a planet stations retrograde, it is at its height of its powers. It is the strongest it can be. So that also figures in because it happens July 4th in North America and very late July 4th, I believe, in Europe, and then July 5th, early in the morning in this part of the world in Asia. So all this taken together are hugely important frequencies. When we look at them, they indicate something is brewing. And again, it's a forecast. It may be expressed in a different way, but we can also see certain patterns that in a way are asking for a release. So keep an eye on July in general for the world, because these are all very important aspects in general when we talk about Neptune going retrograde, for example. And then we have a major event coming up July 13th and 14th as well, which is when Saturn and Neptune, again, are close to each other, almost conjunct, like literally 13 arc minutes apart. That means it's pretty much a conjunction. And this is huge. As I said, that conjunction hasn't happened in millennia, many millennia, and it's powerful. It's in the earliest part of the first sign of the zodiac and indicates new beginnings. So much going on, and I just wanted to give you another taste of some of the things I do regarding forecasting. Of course, I do this personally as well, and in my readings with people. And it's just so exciting to be able to help you on a personal level, but also sometimes on this geodetic mundane astrology level as well. And if you're interested in astrocartography to begin with, you have a way to check your own lines. And I have a free masterclass on astrocartography that you may enjoy. As I said, it's free. You can just go to positivelocations.com and discover that. It's really fun, and we dive into all the lines, including the ones you probably are not aware of that are super important to gauge for travel, for moving, and just to know where you are in your life. And by the way, you don't have to go to these lines to benefit from them. And I talk about that as well in this masterclass. So go to positivelocations.com, enjoy that, and have an incredible week. And I'll see you next week for our next Star Codes podcast. Lots of love.